Well, good evening, good evening, good evening. Oh my God, we don't want that. Let's change that layout. Good evening, good evening. Hello, Pastor Yolanda. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am doing very well, doing great, doing great. I am just making sure. Sorry, folks, those of you that are watching, for our late start, we had some technical problems, but I think we are straight and ready to go now. So thank you all for being patient with us. Yes, 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 yes. We have an amazing discussion plan tonight. I was not going to let us get through March without dealing with Women's History Month. And so that's what we planned around. We have not only Pastor Yolanda and myself, but Mark McCormick will be on with us tonight, as well as a young lady that you all met back in February. She came on and did with us a tribute to Black history, Mrs. Shante Mouton, who is in Tulsa, Oklahoma City. She's in Oklahoma City, and when she comes on, we'll let Shante tell you more about her, so she can you can get a refresher of who she is and what she can and the gifts that she brings to the table. And of course, we have with us again this fabulous. What was the word that Kai joked about with Pastor Yolanda? But we have
Illustrious.
the illustrious, yes, the illustrious Pastor Kyle Cockemeyer. Pastor Kyle, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Yeah.
Well,
We're
very good, very
yeah,
good, very
looking
good.
forward to some Holy Week stuff.
Yes. So let's talk about that as we prepare to get into our conversation. Let me just first quickly tell you all what's going on during Holy Week. St. Mark, we will do Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday with Pastor Kyle and the Journey Evangelical Covenant Church. So, St. Mark, we will host that Thursday night. Pastor Kyle will bring and the Journey will come over. Pastor Kyle is preaching, and then on Friday we will go over to the Journey Church, and they will host, and we're gonna do. And I'll let him, Pastor Kyle. What do you call that service we're gonna do?
It's a Tenebrae service.
Tenebrae, Tenebrae, Tenebrae. We're
Yeah,
gonna
it'll
do
be
a Tenebrae
good.
service.
Very
Yes.
reflective. Let's settle in and listen to the story of Christ's final hours, and it's meant to be somber and meaningful and reflective, and I think it'll be a great experience.
Absolutely. No doubt. No doubt. No doubt. And then, of course, St. Mark, if you want to do a more traditional Good Friday at 12 o'clock on noon at Holy Savior Catholic Church, the Greater Wichita Ministerial League will do that seven last words of Christ. And so you are certainly encouraged to do that. As a matter of fact, I want to encourage you to do both on Good Friday. Let's go over to Holy Savior, celebrate that with the Greater Wichita Ministerial League, and then we'll join Pastor Kyle and the Journey Church. We have not set the time on that yet. We'll let you guys know what time we'll do that. And of course, we'll make announcements this weekend. It'll be in all of our newsletters, in our bulletin. You'll have all the information you need in order to participate.
When might we decide on that? Those times are
We are going to decide on that tomorrow. It was all planned. It was
okay.
all planned. It was all planned, Pastor Kyle. We're going to decide on that tomorrow,
Okay.
and we will do that. But folks, it is Women's History Month. It is Women's History Month. I'm not sure. I should have done my research to find out when we, as a nation, began celebrating Women's History Month. We do Black History Month, of course, in February, but then we have a whole month where we celebrate women's history. So some people may ask the question, why do we have Black History Month? Why do we have Women's History Month? Because traditionally, the story of America and the story of the world to a great degree has pretty much been told as a story of, and this is not meant to be offensive to anyone. This is not an attack on anyone. It's a fact that a lot of American history has been told as the history of what white men did, and black people of color are written out of the story, or the story is written as not from their perspective. And then of course the same thing has happened to women. You will be those of you that have done had a, have gone through college, if you've had any college courses, particularly in his church history, our Christ American history or world history, and you really got some facts, you know that a lot of what has happened in history, has been attributed to men, and women have kind of been written out of the story. That even goes back to the Gospels and Jesus and the folks who were surrounding him. The Gospels are told about the 12 disciples, but there are these little hints in there about there was a large company of women who followed him as well. Of course, their stories don't get told. So we're told about the fecklessness, yes, and the arbitrary unfaithfulness of the 12, but we're not told about the faithfulness of those large company of women who followed him. So part of what we will do tonight is get into some covered history, some undisclosed history of what women have done in history. We're also going to talk about women from a very personal perspective, and just a celebration of Women's History Month, and celebration of women who have impacted us personally, impacted our communities, and impacted our nation. So thank you all. Let's bring on one of our special guests tonight. Hello, Shantae. How are you? Welcome back to Ignite.
Hello. Thank you for having me back. It's nice to be here.
It is wonderful to have you. It is one. So just give us a refresher. Tell folks where you live and what you've been, what you do, and then tell us at least like one of your current projects you're working on right now.
Okay. Well, as you said, my name is Shantae Mouton, and I do live in the Oklahoma City metro. However, I am born and bred Wichita, Kansas. I am actually living here because I work for Love's, the companies that own Love's Travel Stops and Country Stores, one of the larger fuel suppliers in the country. I'm currently overseeing a mammoth project where we're going global. So my days are pretty hectic with that endeavor, but very happy to be here. I am very passionate about the topic. I grew up in a family of wonderful, accomplished women, and I'm anxious to share the story. So happy to be here.
So before we get started, you've got to tell us. I like to hear, like you said, that this topic is you are very passionate about the topic. Say a little about that, Shantae.
Well, I've had the benefit of experience, and I've met some of personally. I had the opportunity to sit down and have dinner with Angela. Oh gosh, but Betty Shabazz, sister Betty, Malcolm X's widow, had the opportunity to meet her, have dinner with her. I've had the opportunity to meet Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, some of the more noteworthy, Angela Davis. There you go. Had the opportunity to have dinner with her and actually speak to her at length about the struggles that she experienced, and so forth. So when it comes to Women's History Month, I've had the benefit of meeting some and dialoguing with some pretty wonderful women who've impacted me personally. So I'm looking forward to sharing those experiences.
Awesome. And looks like Shantae, Pastor Yolanda went and did a little research, and she pulled up some information for us. I made the statement that I did not do one of them, either she or Pastor Kyle. Which one of you all did that? Pastor Kyle, did you do that? One of you all pulled up this information. So I said, when did Women's History begin? In 1987, after being petitioned by the National Women's History Project, Congress passed it, which designated the month of March 1987 as Women's History Month.
Awesome. As soon as you said you hadn't done your research, I thought Yolanda is right now doing her research.
Number one with three, the three with the one wing started doing her research. She started doing her research, and there it is. There it is. So folks, we're part of what we're waiting for. We have one other guest that we're trying to get on, and we've having some difficulty getting him on, and he's got to be a part of this conversation.
I resent the link to him to the email address that you placed in the chat.
Okay, so we'll keep trying. Mark, if you're out there, if you can hear us, please keep trying. Try the last link that I sent to you just like less than 5 minutes ago. Try that link that I sent to your other email address you sent out. And please keep trying. Don't stop trying to get on. But let's go forward. So this is where I want to start. And let's start with Kyle. Kyle can get us started. I want to start here. I want to begin with each one of us sharing with our audience about a woman who has meant something to you personally. So so we're going to deal with 3 women that have influenced. So one woman, just a personal who has had a personal influence in your life, family member, whatever. Number 2, we're going to deal with a woman from history, a woman from history whom you admire, who has influenced your thinking, influenced how you see the world. And then number 3 is a woman from the Bible, or if not from the Bible, a woman who has just impacted you spiritually. So those are the 3 things we're going to do. And each one of us is going to share in each one of those categories. And Pastor Kyle is going for it. So Pastor Kyle, let me ask you, who is a woman that you like to tell us about who has had a personal impact on your life?
Yeah, and this may sound like I'm trying to score some points with my wife, but my wife and I have been, through the ringer, and as you know, a pastor's spouse really is that position really is a tough spot for it's to be in. And so my wife Lindsay has she and I have done life together, and she has followed me from Minnesota to Chicago for seminary, then back to Minnesota for a year for my internship, and then back to Chicago for another year of seminary, and then graduating back to Minnesota to start a career, and then finally, for her being able to get into her, master's degree program in marriage and family therapy, and she is doing her master's program while pregnant to start off with, and then and really just supporting me along the way, and all of those transitions, and then and then following me out to Kansas, which many will say is an upgrade to Minnesota. But that being said, leaving family, leaving friends, uprooting and coming out here. And so I see and recognize the immense sacrifices that my wife has made along the way.
Wow.
And as my wife, she has been an incredible source of wisdom, someone I've been able to bounce things off of, ideas and so forth, which has been an incredible help to me as I serve as pastor. She is an Enneagram 2, and so she is a lover. She loves people well.
Wow.
And really invests in people. So coming out to Kansas, she started her practice more formally in marriage and family therapy. She works at the ICT Center on West Street with Aaron Osbeck, and I just think she really loves people well in her role there.
Wow, awesome. And if I might say, add to that, she's absolutely beautiful. You way over married, Kyle.
Oh, 100%.
Way
100%.
Way over married, Kyle.
That's not the first time I've been told that.
way. But absolutely. Wow, thank you for sharing, and thank you. That is beautiful. It's amazing, particularly those of us who are pastors who move around. It's amazing how our wives adapt to that and go with us and support us in that. So thank you for sharing. All right, awesome. Shantae, let's go with you next.
Well,
So let me ask the question again. So those that may have just logged on. So tell us about a woman who has had great influence or impact upon your personal life.
yes. So I have to preface my answer by saying I was born with 8 living grandmothers.
Mm.
Wow.
And I've had the pleasure of growing up in a family of beautifully spirited and gifted women. So I have to pick my grandmother as my family member who has influenced me. Her name is Cleopatra Nunn, and she is in her 90s, and still kicking, still loving life. I speak to her on a regular basis. But I have to say that she came up in an era as a chef in a time where women were not leaders in the field. And she became head of catering for the Broadview Hotel. Most of us have been to a couple of fancy occasions there. But she also ran the kitchen at her church and fed the hungry at New Hope Baptist Church for uh, my entire life. And just the steadfast servant um, spirit example that she gave to me, I'm choking up, has been profound in my life. So it's just such a pleasant um, surprise when you came and said, share with us someone who has impacted your life within your household. And she came to mind, um, top of mind today. So,
Wow.
Cleopatra Nunn, love you, Grandma.
Did you tell grandma that you were going to do that?
Yes,
And
I'm
is
sure
she,
she's watching.
hopefully she's watching. I hope she's watching. By the way, that's a reminder that if you're watching right now, and if you're on my Facebook page, I want to encourage you to go to the St. Mark Facebook page or YouTube channel so that we can see your comments when you comment. Also, share this broadcast to your page, like share it to your page so you can share with others what's going on. But thank you, Grandma. Thank you for watching. And I know you are so proud of Shantae. She is an awesome young lady, just absolutely awesome. I'm so honored that Mark McCormick has shared you with me, Shantae, has introduced you to me, and that I'm getting to know you. And I look forward to that. Thank you for that. All right. Pat, I will let Mark. He's getting settled in. Let's let Pastor Yolanda go next. Pastor Yolanda, would you like to please do share with us a woman who has had a huge impact in your life personally? You're muted, Pastor.
God bless the mute button. So I've had the privilege of having a handful of women really impact me, but none other than my mother. And I'll start off by saying that I respected her um, in my youth and while she was alive, but postpartum, now that she's passed, I revere her. I didn't understand until I became a woman and a mother and a wife myself what it took to raise 10 children.
Mm.
So I am one of 10. We considered ourselves the Black Brady Bunch growing up, 5 boys, 5 girls, and we consisted of hers, his, and theirs. And I think I learned my outlook on life. I think I've learned to navigate life by the culture that was established in our household. We were never allowed to consider each other's step. We were all siblings, and she led with an iron hand. She wasn't a very loving woman, but she really believed in accountability. And as I have raised my children, the majority of them are out of the home now. I can say that a lot of that just became a part of my DNA. What I really appreciate about her is that she never made me feel as if that there was something that I could not accomplish in my own strength, no matter what it is. From an early age, we were taught to paint, we were taught to roof. I remember helping to tar the Dunbar Theater in Wichita, Kansas in my Easter dress, historical building. We learned to change our own tires. We learned to budget for ourselves. There wasn't any gender bias in our home. We were all to do it all, and we needed to be well versed in doing it all. And there were no excuses in our household. So I appreciate that she gave me a large work ethic. She was a bit of a linguist, so we learned to kind of give her love back by giving her Loisisms. Now, a lot of her Loisms included expletives, so I can't share some of those with you. But some of the positive things that I learned that she quoted, that we began to quote, were actual Bible scriptures. Now, she did not necessarily enjoy church and definitely not pastors. So, to learn as I've come into this new close relationship with God and the Bible, that half of what she was breathing into us was the Word of God. I just thought she was just that smart and that crafty. So, I appreciate her. She may not have believed when she passed. She said, I don't necessarily have a legacy." She felt I was a housewife, although she held tons of credentials. Um, she didn't really believe that she left behind a legacy. And one of the best things that she taught me, she may not have felt like she taught me how to live, but she taught me to die with dignity. She passed away from lung cancer, and she never complained. She never really wanted to be under the influence of narcotics. So the day she died, she just went into her room one day after being on the porch and passing the dozens with us and just gently drifted away. And for the
Wow.
18 months that we celebrated her, she never complained. She never felt like, oh Lord, woe is me. She just continued to keep pouring into us. So I pray that I'm making her proud, that I am giving to my daughters and my granddaughters half of what she gave to me.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. Beautiful woman. And from everything you've told me about her, she was absolutely amazing, strong, honest, truth teller. You know, sometimes the most prophetic, and to use that word the church folks like to use, the most prophetic people I've known were not people who considered themselves church people, but they were just truth speakers in that sense of speaking truth to not just power, speaking truth to everybody, not just folks who were in power. And so, from what you've told me about her, she was that kind of woman. So, thank you for sharing her with us. Amen. Awesome.
And I want to say her name is Marva White. Just to say her name, I feel like adds to her memory. Her Most people don't know her by Marva. Her name was Lois. So in hindsight, we call her Marvelous.
Wow. Wow. And you favor her.
I get it from my mama.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Pastor Mark. Look, I call Pastor Mark McCormick Pastor Mark.
You are not coming
Let
to
me write
me.
down this day and this time where he
You are
called
not
him
coming to
this.
me after Pastor Joe. Are you? This was a setup from the beginning.
Oh my goodness, Mark, how are you, sir? Thank you for not giving up on getting on, because we sure wanted to hear from you tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but you know I'm technologically challenged. I really am. It wasn't until someone said, "Are you using Chrome?" So I had to go and find Chrome and get on. But
Oh wow, that's interesting, because you haven't had to use Chrome before, but nevertheless, I'm glad you're on.
I'm not going to forgive you again for making me go after Pastor Yo. You make me cry. And it's kind of a hard question. I could say that Shantae influenced me a lot. I could say that Shantae's older sister, Lisa, influenced me a
That
lot.
would be true. That would
I
be
was
true.
raised in a home with my mom and my aunt. My mom and her sister. So there are a lot of people I could, but I thought I would mention my dad's mom, my paternal grandmother, Anne Crawford McCormick, who was a minister, and she would tell you there's a road up here called Antioch, and that was the name of her church in Boley, Oklahoma, Antioch Church. And what sticks out to me was hearing about an attempted bank robbery in Boley right before Thanksgiving in 1932. Everybody's in town buying shells, buying food, getting ready for the holiday. Pretty Boy Floyd's gang comes into town to rob the bank.
Wow.
They'd already robbed the bank in Okemah, which is about 12 miles up the road. And they were trying to demonstrate to Floyd, who was not with them that day, so we could rob 2 banks in a day. So they robbed the bank in Okemah. They pulled into Boley, and they went into the bank. They went into the vault, and Mr. Turner, who ran the bank, pulled the alarm. When they pulled the alarm, they shot him. When the alarm went off and they heard the gunshots, people just came running out of the grocery store, out of the barbershop, training fire on the bank. And I remember my father explaining to me what his dad had told him. He said that the bank robber came out of the bank with 2 guns, firing like a maniac. And the town killed one guy, got another one down on the sidewalk, and they were handing out ice picks. They were going to kill the guy. And my grandmother heard all the shooting, ran to town. It was kind of like a valley. Like the town is up on a hill, then there's a valley, and then on the other end of the valley was my grandmother's house. She ran down the hill, up the hill, and in the town, and fell on top of the last bank robber to prevent them from killing him. And she said, "Don't harm this man. He might reform and do something for Jesus. He's some mother's son." Save that man's life. But that was 1932. That was a long time before, I came along. The person that I remember would get out of bed to cook a fish that was about as long as my finger that I had caught. She would make me cinnamon toast for breakfast.
Wow.
She and my grandfather, I called her Mama Ann. I called my grandfather Daddy Langston. They would each slip me money like it was some sort of drug deal. Put that in your pocket and don't tell me. And I just remember she'd gotten old and she wasn't well. She was in the bed a lot. And, we went down to visit her, and she was sundowning, where she, kind of lose track of time, lose track of days. She had this moment of clarity. She looked at me and said, "First, what's all that mess on your face?" Because I had a goatee and she wasn't used to that. And then she said, "Mark, I'm just so tired and I love you." That was that moment of clarity. And by the time we got back to Wichita, she had passed. I just felt like that was a gift. But
we waited for you.
Strong, godly woman. I don't know, just hard to put into words.
And because I want people to see her, one of the things I want people to see is how much she looks like you, Mark. How much you look like her, how much you favor her. It's stunning. When I first saw the picture, I thought it was stunning how much you favor her. So I'm trying. I've got to give it one more shot to try to pull that picture up. Nope, it's not allowing me to. For some, I don't know if it's the formatting on it or what. But I'm not a. It won't let me pull. No. Here it is. We got it.
Cool. Is it coming? Oh, there she is.
You see that,
Yeah,
You know,
Pastor Kyle? Isn't that stunning? Isn't that like
true
Like-
like this. Yes.
Let me tell you,
yes?
that's Joe Langston McCormick right there, and Annie Mae Crawford McCormick.
Wow.
She has a look like, don't you mess with any banks around here. You don't mess with our people.
Yeah, you know when that man got out of prison, he came to Bowley and thanked them both.
Hmm.
Wow.
My granddaddy was chief of police there for over 50 years.
Hmm.
Wow. What a great pick.
Yeah, that is a fantastic picture.
And either Mark McCormick has had the most fascinating things happen in his life, or unlike most people, he just pays attention and gathers the stories better than anybody else. And I don't. Either way, thank God that he does what he does. He's gone through what
I would
he's
say
gone through.
both.
It's the most amazing. It's both, Shantae.
It's both.
Just the most amazing stories. Just the most amazing stories. So I will share quickly the person who has had. So it was tough for me. So I've talked a lot about St. Mark, and they know I've told Linda's much of Linda's story, my wife's story. I could have used my wife. I'm going to get in trouble that Kyle used his wife and that I didn't use Linda. So thanks, Kyle. I appreciate that setup. But I've told Linda's story. Just an amazing person. I will say that one of the things that's super amazing about Linda for me is her. And people that know me will get the humor of this. Somebody who hates details to a lot of the time in terms of like walking through I like to cast vision, big picture, big adventures. I can do details, but I prefer to hand them off to somebody else. She has a relentless deep capacity for my most minute details. It's amazing, which worked out perfectly as co-parents, because then I was the one that she'd make sure the girls had all the details of life worked out and planned out, and then when they got through the details, then I was the fun guy. I had a big vision for what we could do together, Mark, to have a big adventure. But I could have talked about my mom, but my mom was on about a month ago. My mom was on, and people fell in love with her. Absolutely. Somebody said, "Your mama." Absolutely. So y'all already know. That's why I don't need to talk about her tonight, because y'all already know about my mama. So there you go. I want to talk about this person right here, who was not a blood sister, but she was my sister. That's Velocia Kibe. I met her as Velocia Ledette. She was married to a gentleman by the name of Ledette. Met her in Houston, Texas, and we worked together at Mount Vernon United Methodist Church. And then a few years later, I had finished seminary and had gone on staff at Windsor Village. And then a couple of years later, Velocia comes on staff, and we spent most of my time there together. Velocia was about 15, maybe about 10 to 12 years older than I am. But she was a true big sister and just kind of mentored me both in ministry, mentored me at Windsor Village. Pastor Yolanda would get that. You needed a mentor and a covering at Windsor Village. And but was also a truth speaker, truth teller. She battled lupus most of her life and passed away a few years ago. She had gone through a divorce, went to Kenya, met a gentleman, got married to him, and radically just changed her life. But one of the things I want to share with you all that I remember about Velocia is that when she was going through her divorce and she was so broken, and she stand on Sunday and she would preach, and she couldn't preach, Shantae, without crying. So she'd preach a little and cry a little, and preach a little and cry a little. And so Kirby John and I, we're thinking, oh, she's under distress. We need to get her out of the pulpit and let her get away, get some healing. And I went to tell her that, and she says, "Robert, whatever you all do, don't take me out the pulpit," because she says that is what's keeping me sane right now. So preaching was therapeutic for her, but the people loved her. She became the favorite preacher at Windsor Village. So the three of us would share 6 to 7 services, 2 each, and then somebody would preach 3. Velocia was by far the favorite preacher, and she could preach in 12 minutes. 12 minutes. And then the place would explode, and she'd clap her hands and said, "The doors of the church are open right now." And folks will flood the altar. But she was an absolutely amazing woman, and I miss her so much. I sure wish she was still with me now so I could seek her wisdom about so many things. But that's Velocia Kibe, and I'm glad to share her with you. All right. So now let's circle back to Shante, and let's talk now about a woman in history. So someone that you don't know personally, but someone who has been inspirational for you, Shante. Who would you like to tell us?
Well, so perhaps I cheated a little bit because I do know this person personally. I did know this person personally.
Okay.
But and I'll give you a bit of background. I grew up with 5 aunts, amazing women, but the one I knew the least growing up was my Aunt Elizabeth, who lived in New York. And I grew up on the back of a horse, very much a tomboy. And when I turned 13, my father...
We were thrown off of that horse, by the way.
Yes, together.
In her backyard.
So Mark can attest, I was very much a tomboy. Went by the name Little Donnie or John until I was 13. And my dad said, you're gonna go to New York for the summer and learn how to be a girl. And went to stay with 2 aunts that lived very different lives. The first, my Aunt Pearl, who had a house full of children, all girls, and it was very much akin to the life I lived in Wichita, growing up in a house full of girls. And then the next week, they sent me off to stay with my Aunt Elizabeth, who was in foreign currency exchange for one of the major banks and lived a very different life, very independent woman, very strong-minded. And the first day I met her, in that circumstance, I was actually afraid of her because, I did not grow up seeing women who lived in an environment such as New York City, the big city, with all of the amenities that she availed herself of there. And that night my sister and I, she took us to a Broadway production to see Diane Carroll perform in Agnes of God. And that by itself, blows your mind at the age of 13. But the one thing that struck me is that she and my aunt looked so much alike. And their personas were so much alike. And as the curtain came down, we sat there and I kept thinking, well, why aren't we leaving? Everybody else is leaving. And lo and behold, Diane Carroll comes from behind the curtain, comes down and introduces herself to us. She and my aunt were friends, and I can remember her embracing us and, asking us about ourselves, and we had a conversation, and at the end she said, you have the potential to live, and the word she used, you have the potential to live an exquisite life.
Wow.
And as soon as she said that, it changed my paradigm in terms of a woman's place in society. Having grown up where women were defined by their husbands, their role within the household, to meet face to face a woman who championed her own, my phrase, championed her own narrative, and that in an instant changed my life. Needless to say, I was comfortable becoming a girl, as my father instructed that summer, because of the influence that women like Diane Carroll had on my life. So that's why I chose her among all the other amazing women that I've met. That was,
Classy,
yes,
poised, beautiful, articulate. Just you would see her and think of she was a queen.
she was a queen. And the first woman, the first Black woman to be featured in her own television show, Julia, just a FYI. So yes, that's my woman, phenomenal woman from history, Diane Carroll.
Diane
Beautiful.
Carroll.
And she was married to for well, were they married? Let me
Everyone says Sidney Poitier.
as the old folks say in the South, let that alone, let that alone, let me let that alone, let me let that alone, let that alone. I was about to say something way out of bounds, so let me let that alone.
Let that
Awesome.
alone.
I'm from around there, boy.
You don't know. You know what you know about that, Mark. What you know about that, man? But yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Shantae. Thank you, Pastor Yolanda, a woman
Okay,
from
so
history.
woman from history. Okay, so there are so many, but
So many.
my newfound. I want to give you her um, original name. I don't want to say her slave name, but was Isabella Baumfree, right? You know her as Sojourner Truth. I can tell you there are the things that the majority of us know. She was an abolitionist, and what's so profound for me though, number one is that she was illiterate, but her courage. She told the slave master that she didn't run away; she walked away, and she did so in broad daylight. Okay, she is the first African American woman to successfully defend a case that freed her son in the court of law,
Mm.
right? So illiterate now can, but it just goes to show that God gives you everything that you need to fulfill your purpose.
So true.
So as she is fighting for women's rights, she has the opportunity at a convention to deliver a speech that has been coined as the "Ain't I a Woman" speech. And the whole premise of this is just basically for women's rights, that women should have the exact same rights as men. But there's this undertone in this speech that I think still resonates today, that as African American women, we always have to, and I want to give the caveat: African American men have a plight that I will never understand, and it resonates with me. But as an African American woman in a male dominated industry, twofold, corporate America and in um, Christianity, more often than not, my voice is considered a second consideration. And she's giving this speech, and I would read it to you if I had more time, but basically she's saying, I see other people, other women, where they're helped over puddles, but ain't I a woman too? That they're actually given full meals, but ain't I a woman too? And I find myself now sitting at the table, sometimes being the brightest person at the table, just let's be real, having to not intimidate people and allow my ideas to become their own, but sitting there thinking, my God, that although I have the right to vote, although I have the right to speak in certain rooms, that I'm still considered a second class citizen. That although we are the most educated demographic in the world, that we are still the most underpaid. So then she realized at a very early time in history, where she didn't have half of the privileges that I do, that she was a second class citizen. And there's a points of her story where I've read where they even our wombs have been raped and robbed, that parts of our bodies are not even our own. Women overall, but specifically, Black women. So I believe that at an early time, she was a voice that was needed. I don't believe that we would be where we are without her. I think that when you can write a timeless piece of poetry in the way that she did as a speech, and it still um, be relevant, I think she was profound, and I believe that definitely God sent. She also, after a religious premonition, she became an itinerant preacher. So I'm just identifying with her more and more. The more I delve into her, I feel like I'm embodying some of her spirit, and I appreciate her.
That's
As a
beautiful.
matter of fact, thank you for sharing that. And just a quick comment about Sojourner Truth. One of the things I like, she's one of the heroes in American history for me, male or female, who comes from who's a Christian, who he became an itinerant preacher, because she's a model for me when I talk to young people about there is a version of Christianity that you can embrace that empowers your slave master, that empowers white supremacy, that empowers your suppression and your oppression. But there's also a version of Christianity that empowered people uh, to be amazing liberators and amazing outspoken critics of oppressive systems. And she was definitely one of those people. So thank you, Pastor Yolanda. Great story. Pastor Kyle, a woman from history.
So I'm going to give two, but only because they're always paired.
Okay.
And this is going to go way back to 200 AD. Perpetua and Felicity, who do not get enough warnings. So Perpetua was of noble birth. She was from a wealthy family and highly educated. And she became a Christian, and her father urged her to renounce it because if she was going to get baptized, she was going to be arrested. And she could do nothing but call herself a Christian. And so she was baptized and she was arrested with several others in North Africa. And the account is online. You can read her own account of her imprisonment. It's fascinating. I encourage everybody to read this. She is 20 years old, recently married with a newborn child. And so she talks about, the conditions in this prison and breastfeeding her child while in prison. One of the other prisoners, and I'm not sure if it's from her household or not, but it's a slave woman named Felicity. And the two of them are two peas in a pod. They grow closer together, even though their social statuses are completely different. But the difference with Felicity is she's pregnant while in prison, 8 months pregnant. And they are going to bring them to the amphitheater to be killed by the wild beasts. And Felicity is concerned because it is unlawful to execute a pregnant woman. And so she's worried that she will not get to be killed with her friends, with her comrades. And so she's praying that she would give birth on time, and she gives birth just in time. And let me just read this paragraph from this account.
Yes.
These are some amazing women. Okay. The day of their victory dawned, and they marched from the prison to the amphitheater joyfully as though they were going to heaven, with calm faces, trembling, if at all, with joy rather than fear. Perpetua went along with shining countenance and calm step as the beloved of God, as a wife of Christ, putting down everyone's stares by her own intense gaze. I mean, just amazing woman. With them also was Felicitas, glad that she had safely given birth so that now she could fight the beasts, going from one bloodbath to another, from midwife to the gladiator, ready to wash after childbirth in a second baptism. And then it says, and they rejoiced at this, that they had obtained a share in the Lord's sufferings. I mean, these are strong women who joyfully accept the name of Christ, and are longing to, be counted as co-sufferers with Christ. And just the strength. I mean, this is 200 AD. This is about 30-40 years after the one known as Justin the Martyred, is killed. And so just it's this powerful account of women who are willing to die and suffer for their faith.
Wow. Great story.
And it'll preach. It'll preach, Robert.
It will preach. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. By the way, these renderings of Perpetua and Felicity, are these some of the, if these are some of the earliest renderings?
I'm not sure where this comes from, honestly. And I will say, maybe in the last year, I did preach on I think about a year ago, I preached on these two. And I was kind of doing some research, and I found a YouTube video, like a kid's video, oddly. And it had the two whitest people you have ever seen. I'm telling you, it was so, like, I'm looking at this like, oh, come on. Are you kidding me? So I like this picture is much better.
Very good. It looks very much like some of the earliest pictures of the disciples and Jesus that were done that are found.
I mean, it's kind of an iconography style,
right?
And yeah,
right.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of which are found in the oldest churches, living buildings in Ethiopia, and the Coptic churches in Ethiopia. Mm-hmm. So, great story. Thank you, Pastor Mark.
You always come to me after someone feels like an story, but everybody on here has been amazing. So I'm going to cheat again. I mean, I'm going to talk about three people. The first person is Fannie Lou Hamer, who spoke out. Yeah, this is from where you from, my man.
Yes.
Who next year will be 60 years since she testified on national TV about her ordeal trying to register to vote. And her testimony was so powerful. The president called a press conference hastily to try and bump her telecast from the airwaves. But ultimately it didn't matter, because all the stations broadcast it in its entirety the next day. But this was a sharecropper and timekeeper who was testifying that what a wonderful picture. What a wonderful picture. That's her. Testifying that when they went to register, they had to take literacy tests, and the police, law enforcement said, only 2 of you can take the test at a time. And then they cited the driver for driving a bus the wrong color. Wow. When she got all the way back, she was arrested, brought back to the police station, where she could hear people being beaten and tortured in another room. And they told her, we're going to make you wish you were never born. And then they took 2 inmates, gave them a blackjack, and they were forced to beat Fannie. The first one beat her until he got tired. They gave the blackjack to the other one, told the other one to sit on her feet because she was working her feet. And she closes with this real powerful word. She said, I question America. Is this America, where we have to be at home with our phones off the hook because people are calling and threatening our lives simply because we want to live as first-class citizens? And that's what voting is. So with that, anniversary coming up next year, I think it's important to start talking about the importance of voting today, because like every election we have, it seems like every 4 years, it seems like it's the most important. I think this is the most important, particularly when people like Fannie Lou had to suffer so much and was so strong, throughout. I took a group of people from TCAM one year to Alabama to see the civil rights triangle from Birmingham to Selma to Montgomery and back.
Wow.
When we were in Selma, we met a lady named Joanne Bland, and she was on the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Bloody Sunday with her big sister. And so she gets on the bus and everybody's kind of chattering. And she just had this command. She said, when I talk, she didn't even introduce herself. She said, when I talk, you don't talk. When you talk, I won't talk. And when I take you all to some of these sketchy areas, if I run, you run. She was hilarious. So she shares this story about being arrested the first time when she was 8 years old because she went to the library in Selma on the wrong day.
Wow.
She talked about falling asleep in the middle of all the beating and the tumult in Selma. And she said she woke up because her sister had been hit across the head and was bleeding, and the droplets of blood dropping from her sister's face dropped onto her face and woke her up. She said the police beat people off that bridge, down the street, and back to the church where they had began the march. Then they entered the church, and she said it felt like they just beat people all evening. She said she saw two policemen pick up a teenage boy and throw him through the baptismal wall and break both of his arms. Saw police hit a woman on top of the head at the top of the stairs, and she said you just watched her roll down to the bottom of the stairs and just lay there motionless. Again, I'm talking about the importance of voting rights and what people sacrificed. People didn't go through that so we could sit at home and sit out elections. So those are two people in history that I'd met Miss Bland, and she remembered me when I came back.
Wow.
I never met Fannie Lou Hamer, but this next person is someone that I knew, Shakura Jamila. Shakura Jamila went to my buddy's church, and when I was in college, I got to know her, and she was selling books out of her closet on her house over there on Pyatt. And you could buy the first books I bought were volume 1 through 4 by Jawanza Kunjufu, Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. In fact, we had Jawanza come and speak at KU when I was a student there. He was just this brilliant brother. So I was reading these books, and then she had videotapes of Malcolm X speeches and all these other speeches that you can get. And she was really the person who introduced me to Afrocentrism, which is a tenet by which I live. The church that I attended in Kentucky considered itself an Afrocentric style church. We had a Fannie Lou Hamer Family Life Center. We flew the red, black, and green flag out in front of the Family Life Center. You could be a part of the Afrocentric lifestyle ministry and take on an African name. I mean, it was just all of that was a part of it. And it all really began with Shakura, who was a nurse and was the first person that I ever heard talk about the Black infant mortality problem in 67214, where
Wow.
your church is today.
That's exactly right.
It leads the nation.
It leads the nation.
Mortality.
Yep.
This was the first person that I heard talking about it. It was also the first person that I knew personally had changed their name. And because I cared for her so much, because I looked up to her so much, it bothered me when people wouldn't use the name that she chose for herself.
Right.
They used her given name almost to insult her. But this was and Sean can tell you, this was a very strong person. It was a person who didn't mind protest, who didn't mind speaking truth to power. And someone that really influenced me as someone in news media who thought it was important to tell the whole story.
Wow. Wow. There's Mark again with some amazing stories. Amazing stories. And thank you so much for talking about voting rights, because as we celebrate Women's History Month, one of the ways we can do that is to remember the women who put their lives on the line so that we can vote. And so all the folks out there who say you so crazy about your mama and your grandmama and your big mama and your sisters and your, like, remember the women who suffer, who were beaten, brutalized, either killed or had their lives threatened so that you could have the right to vote. So thank you for that. And of course, Fannie Lou Hamer. As a matter of fact, I'm going to just share that one with you, and that'll save us some time. I was going to do Ida B. Wells was going to be one of my, and particularly because of her stance against lynching. So when it was open season to lynch Black people in America, particularly Black men, and nobody was doing anything about it, you could, and let me be clear, when we say nobody was doing anything about it, in the South in particular, they will lynch someone unjustly, you know, and then they would put the word out that you are not to talk about it. So if you go to the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum in Jackson, Mississippi, they too have a lynching memorial that has the names of all the people who were lynched in the state of Mississippi by county. So you can go and find that. So I look up Marion County, and there's a list of, and you see that, and it'll tell you in the one in Mississippi, different from the one in Montgomery, Alabama. They tell you why they were lynched. If the reason was known, they will tell you. So it'll say so and so was lynched on this day for this alleged reason, and then 2 days later, this person was lynched for talking about the lynching that happened to. So that kind of thing. And so to know that kind of brutality happened, and Ida B. Wells was the person who really decided that enough is enough.
A journalist.
Yes. And that's a picture of her. And she took a stand. But
Looks like she had enough.
She looked like And by the way, you can go to her home. She lived in Holly Springs, Mississippi. You can go to her home that's on the campus of Rusk College, which is one of our historically Black colleges, just a great part of the country, which people don't really know about. So you have Holly Springs and you have Rusk College and the history there. Very close by, you have the birthplace of Elvis Presley. Very close by, you have the University of Mississippi, what was referred to as Ole Miss. You have all that history there. And then you're right just south of Memphis, where you have so much history, death of Dr. King and so many other things in that part of the country. North Mississippi, the Delta Mississippi, and all the things that happened there. But
the Delta is the home of all American music.
And it is the home of all American music. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. And so but this lady right here, and Mark, by the way, I got an opportunity to go to her birthplace in Ruleville, Mississippi, and see the church where she acted. And there's a picture of the church where she actually sat in when she began to get involved. And that's the little church sits there. And then, of course, at her burial site, they have a huge statue of her. But what an amazing, amazing woman. Let's go now and let's talk about women who have influenced you spiritually. It could be someone from the Bible. It could not be someone from the Bible. Pastor Kyle, kick us off.
Yeah. So I thought about Phoebe. Deacon mentioned only once in the Bible, but significantly. Romans 16, verses 1 and 2. Let me grab that real quick. It just says, I commend to you our sister Phoebe, a deacon in the church of Cenchrea. I ask you to receive her in the Lord in a way worthy of his people, and to give her any help she may need from you, for she has been a benefactor of many people, including me. So she is described as a deacon. Now, deacon Diakonos in Greek simply means a servant, but in this context would specifically speak to an office in the church. And the thing that I've been fascinated with recently is something that Scott McKnight talks about, and that is that what he is doing is he's telling us that it is Phoebe who is bringing the letter of Romans to Rome.
Wow.
And this is absolutely significant because a letter carrier's role was not simply to bring it over, pop it in the mailbox, but he would have prepped her ahead of time so that, hey, when you get to this section, I want you to, really focus in on this group of people, and when I want you to emphasize these words and this and that. And if they had questions, which invariably they probably did about the book of Romans, one of perhaps the most theologically deep book of Scripture, who were they going to ask? They were going to ask Phoebe. And so Phoebe had the authority not only just to bring the letter, but also to preach the letter to the churches in Rome. And not just one church, but there were several house churches. So she's going from church to church, preaching the book of Romans and answering their questions and doing it authoritatively.
Wow.
And so Scott McKnight, uses this as an example of, Phoebe isn't silent in the church. Phoebe is, he's entrusting one of the most important theological letters to her, a dangerous activity, but she is a leader in the church. He trusts her, and he entrusts this letter to her, and she's the preacher. She's the one who brings the word.
Wow. I wish we could spend another 20 minutes talking about that. For our folks, so that's what a rich story straight from Scripture about a person who's mentioned briefly.
Yep.
As if, standing over on the corner was this lady named Phoebe, but don't worry about that. She didn't do very much.
And Romans 16, if you look through Romans 16, most of the people mentioned in there are women.
Right.
And likely leaders of the house churches or co-leaders of the house churches there, including Junia the Apostle.
That's exactly right. Wow. Great story. Thank you, Kyle. Awesome. Shantae.
We can't hear you.
Still can't hear you. I don't know. You're not muted. Do you have a microphone issue?
Shantae, try this again. Yeah, she's going to log back out. And as we're waiting for her to log back in, Pastor Yolanda, a woman from the Bible or someone who has influenced you spiritually? Shantae, you'll come back in after Pastor Yolanda.
So I chose Queen Esther for lots of reasons. Again, the women that I've kind of I like your.
Yeah, your picture had a copyright image that it wouldn't let me put.
This is the real image. It's the actual photograph.
It's the actual photograph.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. Well, and she's known for that. She's known for her beauty. She came into her position as queen as a Jew to a Persian king, which was unheard of at that time. So the Jews are living in exile. And this story, it's right after Nehemiah, just in case you're not familiar of where this book is in the Old Testament. But what I appreciate about this particular scripture, one of the most famous quotes in here is for such a time as this. And all of us have these types of moments in our lives to where there's an opportunity for us to do the godly thing, right? And the godly thing may cost us our lives, just like many of the other women that we spoke about tonight. So she was well aware that doing God's plan and will in her life was never easy and always was met by opposition. So, as the queen, although she had this title and this position, and the king adored her, she definitely wasn't supposed to be in conversation with him on important matters. The king had his chief minister who is a busybody, who at one point in time decides that he has a total vendetta against the Jews, decides that he's going to annihilate them. And this book is just about how the Feast of Purim, as Pastor Kyle likes to say, how it comes about and why it's actually celebrated. So he decides that he's going to annihilate the Jews. One of these Jews happens to be Queen Esther's cousin Mordecai, who actually helped propel her into the position that she's actually in. And he begs her, basically, although her husband does not know that she is a Jew and she wants to remain underneath the radar, he pleads with her that your entire lineage is going to be annihilated if you don't do something. And this is probably what you were purposed for. Now, he had faith that if she didn't do something, someone would, but it would be after lots of lives were lost. So she decides to, now she was patient, she used wisdom, and she operated totally within her belief in God. She thought it through before she actually approached her husband and won his ear. And instead of the Jews being annihilated, his chief minister Haman is actually hung out to dry. So I appreciate that in time where she could have remained safe, where she could have continued to have all of the bells and whistles afforded to her in life, she could have hid, but she decided to put her neck on the line, and God honored her for that. So I like that, because it's a message to all of us that it's not going to be comfortable to be in leadership. It's not going to be comfortable. You just mentioned that although she could have lost her life for speaking about lynching, Ida B. Wells was just totally upset about it and was not going to allow it to continue. And she spoke out about it. So I think that we have to be courageous leaders. We can't be willing to go with just the thought of the majority, the thought of those people that are closest to us, that we just want to take their opinion. Lives can perish for it. And so for that particular moment, she won the day, and she won the legacy for her people. So still today, we had a guest on a few weeks ago, and he kind of gave us a little bit of more information about the culture and why Purim is celebrated. I had no idea that it was this big thing to where you wear costumes and you can drink all that you want. I appreciated his rendition and sharing of the Book of Esther, but I think it's something that everyone should actually read. I tell people all the time, there is no need to watch mindless television. If you want murder, death, drugs,
conspiracy,
you name it, the Bible is all the reality TV series that you actually need. Just open it up and read into it. And I love the story of Esther's life.
CSI the Bible. That I can see it now.
Yes. Thank you. That's a great story.
It is a great story of Esther finding her power, finding her voice, and
her purpose.
She's sheepish, and Mordecai needs to, like, hey, you're there. Like,
this is probably why you were born, Esther. You don't get this right now. I don't know when you'll get it, but for such a time as this, I need you to handle this situation.
Yeah. Wow. Great stuff. Great stuff. Let's see if Shantae we're able to hear her now.
So are you able?
Yes.
Yay.
Yay. Yes.
I'm back. So I chose, for very selfish reasons, I chose Ruth because I married late in life, and I am a testament that you search your heart and love God, and things will fall into place. Because I can say that I was probably I was the last person most of my friends would have ever said would get married. And I started a Bible study under Cornelius Sanders, Revelation Christian Ministries. And probably the first week, and I have my notes from my Bible study to this day, he said, if you give me 3 years of your life, you will never be the same. And I go back and look, and I moved away from Wichita with my husband 3 years and a week after he made that comment. And what struck me, because we had a Thursday Bible study, and I would be there every single Thursday. But when he started a section on marriage, I started like, oh, I have other things to do on Thursday. I can't attend this section on marriage because it doesn't apply to me. But then I felt convicted, and I showed up for the marriage the section on marriage, and it hit my heart. And about a week later, I was walking through the parking lot of Dillon's at Central and Woodlawn, and I heard and felt the voice of God say, "Give up your coat." And I looked down, and this coat I saved to get this camel hair coat. I'll go home and get you 10 coats. And as I was walking to the door, there was actually a box collecting coats for the needy. And I felt, God is speaking to me, and everything that Apostle Sanders said came to bear. The book of Ruth hit my heart, and I took my coat off and put it in the box. And 2 hours later, I got a call from CCH company, Wolters Kluwer International company, that is located in the old Pizza Hut headquarters building, not far away, at Harry and what is that? Harry and what's the street north of Rock?
Webb.
Needless to say, 2 hours later, I get a call from them, and they say, "We want to talk to you. We need you. Your tax experience, your finance experience. We want to hire you." And something on my heart just said, "God wants this to happen." I go to work there, and everyone, and it was actually Pastor Lincoln Montgomery's daughter was one of my coworkers. And she kept telling me, "There's this guy I want you to meet. I think the two of you are meant to be together." And I kept saying, "No, Jamae, I'm not interested. No, 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 no." And one day I saw a person that I had never seen before, walk past my office with a coffee mug. And all of a sudden I had a great yearning for a cup of coffee. I never drank coffee, picked up my coffee mug, poured out all my pens and pencils, and walked into the break room to get a cup of coffee. And all the while I'm thinking, surely, and I'm hearing, this the whole story of Ruth, following Naomi, and following God, and finding her Boaz. And that day I met my Boaz, James Mouton, and the rest is history. And so for me, for everyone that might be listening, if you haven't found your Boaz, sit up close in church, and take your pen and paper when they are preaching on preparing yourself for Boaz, because I've been married for 15 years, and he brought me a dozen roses to my office just earlier today. So there, it's possible. That's all I can say. That
Amen.
Amen. Awesome.
so that's my testimony.
Ruth, Mark, you're
I
close.
knew you were going to say Mark, man. So my story is not as good as Sean's, but you know, when I was living in Louisville, Kentucky, I was the religion writer for the newspaper there, and I was covering a lot of tumult at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. There was a real battle over, you know, what was going to happen.
Here's another great story. Here's another great.
What have you done?
I'm kind of like there was a real fight between what we were calling in the paper then, you know, theological conservatives, theological progressives, over the life of the seminary. And the conservatives actually ousted half of the tenured faculty at the seminary. And one of the people who was targeted was a woman professor at the seminary from Shawnee, Oklahoma, by the way, who taught a particular course that taught pastors how to pastor a church. And the trustees were upset that a woman was teaching this course when the Southern Baptists don't believe that women should serve in the senior pastorate. And this Professor Marshall, her name was Molly Marshall, Professor Marshall came under attack because she had attended a conference and began a prayer with "Dear God, our Father and our Mother." And they brought her up on heresy charges, calling her a fundamentalist. And in writing about this, I discovered a book called "Is It Okay to Call God Mother?" And in the book, it talks about God in labor with the world, God as a protective mother bear, that God has feminine aspects, this notion that we're all created in God's image. That should include men and women. And it was that idea that really, it really hit my heart. And I remember putting in a lot of extra hours just doing my own kind of research on what Dr. Marshall was going through. And the day that she decided to step down, there was a campus sermon contest. Getting an echo. And students would submit their sermons based on their student number. Well, that year, in the middle of that controversy, women finished first, second, and third in the contest that year. And it was one of the last stories that I did before I left Louisville to move here. But that book, that story, Dr. Marshall, what I learned through that, what I learned at my home church, where my own pastor in Kentucky left an association of Black Kentucky Baptists that was 125 years old, that his grandfather was a part of, because of this this notion that women couldn't serve in the senior pastorate. So that is something that has really stayed with me, and that it was something that came top of mind, front of mind when I got your invitation.
Mark, what a great story. And Pastor Yolanda nailed it as you were begin to tell a story. Like, what haven't you done? And he just has one story, but what a great story. And you surprise me. You keep surprising me. You don't talk much about it, but your experience there at the seminary, that you've done some profound reflection on Christian theology.
Could I just share one more thing?
Yes,
I know we're running out of time, but I got really sick. I got really sick when I was there. I was in the hospital more than 20 days. I had ulcers, also bleeding, and made friends with a man from Africa who would come in every day, this big smile, and he does precisely what a chaplain makes you feel comfortable, warm, and he was explaining to me, this is related to tonight's topic, but he said that in his society in Africa, women actually ran everything. They let men think that they ran it, but women really ran everything. So that there'd be men in a circle having a discussion about what should be done. And then every now and then, a man would lean back like this, a woman would tell him something, and then he would contribute. But I just always, that was very formative. I was 22 years old at that time. It was very formative, and I'm glad I had those experiences.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I will just very, very quickly, I will tell you that the woman that I wanted to share from the Bible is, and this is a fictionalized depiction of her, of course, as a cartoon picture depiction of her, but Deborah, which by the way is very similar to that native African tribal culture where the women, if you read Proverbs 31, because we talk about the Proverbs 31 woman, and you read that, by the time you finish all the stuff that she does, you're like, what do men do? Like she does, like she's making the money, she's sewing the clothes, she's cooking, she's doing everything. And so there's a picture, and I don't have time to, if I had time, I'll pull it up, but there's a picture of a beautiful art piece of a woman in a tribal setting, and she's carrying not just her children on her back, she's carrying her children and the water bucket and her husband on her back, this strong, which is so depict. But that story is similar to what the story of Deborah in the Bible, who was one of the first recorded judge of Israel, and she sat under a tree. It literally says that she sat under a tree and judged the nation. So in other words, she was like the supreme court of and they came to her on the tree, and she meted out justice throughout the nation. And then she was a military director and told them when to fight, how to fight, and even had to tell her husband, be courageous because I got your back. So just these kind of masterful women. So that story lines up very much with the story of Deborah and with the story of, with the narrative, the depiction of the woman found in Proverbs 31. This has been absolutely awesome. Thank you all. There's never enough time. I do want to share with our folks that next week, the fun keeps going because we will have on with us a gentleman that Mark McCormick, as you all gonna say, like, would he have any really good people if Pastor Kyle hadn't reached out to be his friend, if Pastor Yolanda hadn't befriended him, would he have any good people? But I'm so excited about this gentleman. He'll be on with us next week, Dr. Paul James, who is a Wichita, by the way, native Wichita, an amazing person, super smart, does consulting with Lighthouse, company called Lighthouse Strategies, where they do business consulting. But he is also a world historian, and his emphasis is African American history and African history. And he is just an amazing intellect. Has great stories like Mark about Wichita and people who have come through Wichita, come out of Wichita. So he will be our guest on next week for our next broadcast of Ignite. Pastor Kyle, thank you so much. We will follow up tomorrow and get more details together between us so that we can share them with our congregations about Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday. Shante, so good to see you again, my sister. I've got your number now, and as well as your email address. So when Linda and I are down in Oklahoma City, we're gonna let you know we're coming. And I want the royal, whatever you consider the royal treatment. I I want the cousin Mark treatment. I want the royal treatment when we come to Oklahoma City. And Mark is always my brother. Thank you so much, man. Love you much. God bless you all. Pastor Yolanda, let's hang on with Pastor Kyle a little while longer and make a couple of announcements. Mark, Shante, thank you all. God bless.
Take care.
So, Pastor Yolanda, one announcement, just want to announce real quick. So we're gearing up for Easter, and just two announcements just to let you know what's coming. We're going to start the Easter service at 9:45. All of this is going to be in the April bulletin. All of this will be in announcements coming up. But I just want, for those of you that are watching, I want to give you a preview. Easter service will start at 9:45. We want you to bring candy because we're going to give a gift basket to every kid who shows up on that Sunday. So Dottie, our children's ministry director, will want me to tell you to start bringing the can, bring more candy, bring more stuff that we can hand out to kids on that Sunday. And then, of course, we're going to do, again, Holy Thursday here at St. Mark. Our guest will be the Journey Evangelical Covenant Church and Pastor Kyle. Pastor Kyle will preach. You all know he did an amazing job preaching last week, preached a powerful message. So he will preach for us again. And then we'll go over to the Journey Evangelical Covenant Church on Friday for Good Friday, where we would do more of a reflective, contemplative, liturgical celebration of Good Friday in a tenebrae service.
Yeah,
Got it.
good memory when you want to.
And we're going to have an awesome time as we
It's
prepare.
that valedictorian, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pastor Cal, do you have any announcements for us?
Just Holy Week and Easter stuff. We're gonna have a little potluck breakfast before our service. That'll be at 8:30, and then we'll have our service at our regular 9:30 time, and then a Easter egg hunt for the kids afterwards.
Awesome.
We're looking forward to it.
Awesome. And then on tomorrow night, folks, I have another podcast coming before you, a podcast that we're doing with Jan Fox Peterson, who is a conflict mediator, and with HR 259 school district, and then Dan Stockmer, who owns Prairie Hill Vineyard over on the far west side of Wichita. And we are building this amazing friendship. We've taken it public. And so we're digging deep into conversations about race and about gender and about all the ways that we've been divided as people. And we dig into great conversations with wonderful people with the attempt of building community and building understanding. So we will do our next podcast tomorrow night, 7 p.m. You can catch it on the St. Mark Facebook page and YouTube channel, as well as on my Facebook profile. So folks, we hope you'll tune in and join us for that on tomorrow night. God bless you all. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you had a great time. Yes, Pastor Yolanda has one more announcement.
Our power prayer this weekend.
Yes, our power on Saturday at 10 o'clock, Pastor. 10 o'clock.
10 to 11. And you don't have to stay the entire hour. If you come, you want to just come to the altar for 15, 20 minutes and then excuse yourself, fine. Or if you want to stay the full hour with us, we welcome that as well.
Saturday at 10 o'clock here in the sanctuary, led by Jessica Smart and Linda Sims and our other prayer warriors. Our power. Again, Pastor, they don't even have to stay 15 minutes. If you just want to come by for 5 minutes, just pray. You don't have to stay the whole time, but it's just 1 hour, and we want to invite you all to come out and be a part of that powerful time. God bless you all. We will see you all next week when we're here with Dr. Paul James. Have a wonderful night. God bless.